If you ever think one tiny choice can't ruin your life, I need you to listen to me for 60 seconds. My name is My. Yeah, that's my real name. And tonight I'm sitting on the floor of a nearly empty apartment with the heat turned down to 62 because every dollar suddenly matters. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring is filling the room, and I keep catching myself staring at the same spot on the wall where a framed photo used to hang. I took it down earlier, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't stand looking at the person I used to be. There's a cardboard box by my left knee with random leftovers of my before life, a set of keys that don't unlock anything anymore, a crumpled receipt from Target, and a little spiral notebook with a soft cover that says my life diary in faded gold letters. It's so ordinary it's embarrassing. A cheap notebook you'd buy on a whim, like you're the kind of person who has their life together enough to write things down. I used to be that person, at least I thought I was. I used to believe that if I planned carefully, stayed kind, and worked hard, life would feel stable. Not perfect, just stable. But the truth is, stability can vanish faster than your phone battery when you forget your charger. And it can happen without a crash, without some dramatic headline, without a villain twirling a mustache. Sometimes it happens because you trusted the wrong feeling at the wrong time. I found the page tonight by accident. I wasn't even looking for it. I was looking for a pen, of all things, because I needed to write down numbers I didn't want to face. Rent, bills, the balance that used to look normal and now looks like a joke. I slid the notebook out of the box, and when it fell open, it landed on a page that had been folded and unfolded so many times the paper looked tired. That's when I saw my own handwriting staring back at me like a warning I refused to read the first time. The date at the top hit me first. Not because it was a special day, but because it was the day I made the choice that started the collapse. The sentence under it was short, casual, almost cute, like a girl trying to convince herself she's brave. I'm going to read it exactly how I wrote it, because if I change even one word, I'll be lying again. I'm choosing the faster way. I'm choosing him. That's it. That's the line. And the moment I saw it, my stomach dropped, not in a dramatic movie way, but in a quiet, humiliating way, like your body remembers a mistake before your brain can defend it. Because I remember what I meant by faster. I remember the voice that made faster sound smart instead of risky. I remember how I told myself that cautious people end up stuck, and that I wasn't going to be stuck anymore. I remember thinking I was finally choosing myself. But I wasn't choosing myself. I was choosing pressure. I was choosing pride. I was choosing the version of love that feels like urgency. And the worst part? When I wrote that sentence, I felt relieved. Like I'd solved something. Like the hard part was over. I had no idea that was the first domino. And once it tipped, everything else followed. Quietly at first, then all at once. My fingers hovered over the ink like it might change if I stared hard enough. I am choosing the faster way. I am choosing him. I read it again, slower. And this time I noticed what was underneath. Not a paragraph. Not some poetic confession. Just a bulleted list, like I was trying to turn my heart into a spreadsheet. It started with pros. Under that I had written, no more waiting. No more second guessing. He believes in me. He has a plan. Then cons, and the first line under that was the one that makes me feel sick now. Everyone will think I am making a mistake. Not, I might be making a mistake. Everyone will think it. Like the problem was other people's opinions, not the decision itself. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me, and for a second my whole body jolted like I was about to get a text from the past. It was just a low battery warning. 10%. That felt poetic in the worst way. I picked it up anyway and scrolled, because that is what you do when you do not want to sit with your own thoughts. My recent calls were empty. My messages were mostly automated alerts I had not opened. And then I saw his name buried a little lower, not in the recent thread, but in the part of my mind that never really deletes anything. Ethan. I did not tap it. I just stared at the letters like they were a door I did not want to open. Ethan did not start as a mistake. That is what people do not understand when they hear a story like this. They think you wake up one morning and choose chaos. No, you choose something that looks like relief. You choose someone who talks like certainty. When Ethan entered my life, I was tired of being the responsible one. I was the girl who paid her bills on time, who kept her credit score clean, who packed lunch instead of buying it, who said no to things even when I wanted to say yes. I had friends who called me disciplined like it was a compliment, but it felt like a cage. Ethan made it feel like I could finally breathe. He would look at me and say things like, "You do not need to live small just because you are scared." He said it like he was reading my mind, like he was on my side. That is why the page mattered. It was proof that I did not just drift into this. I wrote it down. I signed my name to it in my own handwriting. At the bottom of the page, there was another line, circled so hard the paper was almost torn. "If I do not do this now, I will regret it." I laughed out loud when I read that, but it was not funny. It was that sharp laugh you make when you realize your past self was confidently wrong. Because the regret did not come from hesitating. The regret came from rushing. I set the notebook on my lap and looked around the room again. The corners were too quiet. The air smelled faintly like dust and old coffee. My kitchen counter was bare except for a single mug and an envelope I had been avoiding. The envelope was from my bank. I had not opened it because I already knew it was not going to say, "Congratulations, everything is fine." The page in my lap was not just a memory. It was a receipt. It was the moment I traded slow safety for fast promise. And the way I know it was the wrong trade is simple. The version of me who wrote that page thought she was stepping into a better life. The version of me sitting here tonight cannot even remember the last time she slept without waking up with her heart racing. I turned the page, and there it was, the next entry, written the very next day. The first sentence was so bright it felt cruel. He said, "This is going to change everything." I stared at that sentence until the words started to blur, because it sounded exactly like something you want to believe when you are tired. He said, "This is going to change everything." In my head, I could still hear Ethan's tone from back then, calm and confident, like he had already lived the future and came back to hand it to me. I remember where I was when he said it, because I wrote down the details like they mattered more than the risk. I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store, the kind with bright lights and neat aisles and prices that always feel a little higher than they should. The dashboard clock said 6:17 p.m., and my cart was full of practical things. Chicken, rice, oatmeal, coffee pods I had convinced myself were a small treat. Ethan called while I was calculating the total in my head, and that is not an accident. He always seemed to show up in the exact moment my brain was busy trying to be responsible. He said, "My, you are doing everything the hard way. You do not have to." Then he told me about an opportunity. He did not call it risky. He did not call it a gamble. He called it smart. He said he had a plan and he needed someone he could trust, someone organized, someone who could handle the details. He used the word partner like it meant respect, not liability. And I remember feeling flattered in a way that makes me cringe now. Because the truth is, I wanted to be seen as more than careful. I wanted to be seen as special. In the diary, right under that sentence, I had written another one. He chose me for a reason. That is how the hook gets you. Not the big promise. The feeling that you were selected. I turned another page and the handwriting got faster, more excited, the way mine does when I am trying to outrun doubt. I had drawn a little star next to a number, $3,500. That was the amount I wrote down as the first step. Not the total, just the first step. I wrote, "This is not spending. This is investing." I even underlined it twice, like underlines can turn a decision into a fact. Sitting here now, I want to reach back through time and shake myself, but I cannot. All I can do is keep reading and tell you what I ignored. Because I did ignore things. I ignored how Ethan always had an answer before I finished a question. I ignored how he talked about people who do not get it, like they were beneath him. I ignored how every time I hesitated, he made it sound like my hesitation was the problem, not the situation. I ignored the way my best friend's voice changed when I mentioned him. She did not yell. She did not insult him. She just got quiet and said, "My, please slow down." And I wrote in my diary that night, "She is projecting her fear onto me." That line is so arrogant I almost tore the page out. But I did not, because I need to remember the pattern. The moment someone warned me, I turned it into proof that I was brave. The worst part is, the day after that entry, there is a check mark next to the $3,500 like a task completed. And right beside it, in smaller writing, I left myself a note I did not understand at the time. Do not tell anyone yet. Keep it clean. Keep it simple. That note was Ethan's voice in my handwriting. And when I read it now, in this empty apartment with my phone dying at my side, I finally understand what it really meant. It did not mean protect my peace. It meant hide the truth. I kept the notebook open on my lap like it was a witness, And I tried to remember the exact moment I turned "keep it clean" into a rule I would follow without question. The entry after that note was written in the kind of upbeat tone I use when I am trying to convince myself that everything is normal. I had listed out the steps like a checklist: transfer the money, screenshot confirmation, send to Ethan, do not overthink, celebrate after. Even reading that now, I can feel how badly I wanted a win, even a small one. Back then, my life looked fine from the outside. I had a steady routine. I had a job that paid my rent and kept my fridge full. I was not rich, but I was not drowning. I would get up, make coffee, drive to work, scroll through my phone during lunch, and tell myself I was building something by being consistent. The only thing I could not ignore was the feeling that I was falling behind everyone else. Social media makes you feel like you are the only person not leveling up. You see people buying houses, traveling, getting promotions, starting businesses, and you start believing that slow is the same as stuck. Ethan knew exactly how to press on that bruise without making it look like pressure. He would say, "I am not trying to rush you, My. I just do not want you to miss your timing." Timing. That word sounds so professional, so responsible, like he was giving me career advice. In my diary, I had written, "He is protective of my future." I want to underline that sentence now, not because it is true, but because it shows you how the mind can rewrite reality when it wants comfort. The first transfer was not dramatic. That is what makes it dangerous. It was just a normal Tuesday. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, my bank app on my phone, and a sticky note with Ethan's instructions written in my handwriting. Send as friends and family. Put memo, reimbursement. I did not understand why it needed to be that specific, but I told myself it was just clean paperwork. When my finger hovered over the final button, I paused long enough for my heart to speed up. That was my body trying to warn me. Ethan was on the phone, and he did not raise his voice, but he did something worse. He laughed softly like my hesitation was cute. Then he said, "You are so careful. That is why you are going to be great at this." Compliment, then push. I pressed confirm. The money left my account. And for a second, I felt lighter, like I had finally started the thing I had been talking about for months. I took the screenshot like he asked. I sent it. He replied fast, "Perfect. You are doing amazing. Trust me." Those 3 words, "trust me," felt like a warm blanket. And that is how the first domino falls. Quietly. No alarm. No siren. Just a screenshot and a little rush of hope. That night I wrote, "I feel proud of myself." I even added a smiley face, which I almost never do. 2 days later, I wrote another entry. "Ethan says we are ahead of schedule." Then a third. "He says I can double it if I want." And there it was, the line that should have stopped me cold, the line that looks obvious now but did not then. He says people who ask too many questions always lose. When I read that sentence tonight, I swallowed hard because I could see myself obeying it. I could see the way I started editing my own thoughts, trimming away anything that sounded like doubt, because doubt would make me one of those people. I thought I was choosing confidence. I was actually choosing silence. And the most terrifying part is how fast it felt normal. By the time Ethan said I could double it, my brain had already been trained to treat fear like a flaw. I can hear myself from back then saying, "I am just being responsible," and I can hear him answering, "No, you are being scared." He said it gently, like he was saving me from myself. And the truth is, I wanted to be saved. I wanted to believe there was a faster lane and that I had finally earned the right to take it. In my diary, the entries start to look like a countdown. Day 5, Ethan says we are moving. Day 6, he says the numbers look good. Day 7, he says we should not talk about it because people will try to sabotage. Sabotage. That word made me feel important. Like what I was doing was so real, so valuable, that outsiders would want to ruin it. Looking back, that is the oldest trick in the world. Isolate someone, then call it protection. The first time I asked a real question was small. I wrote it down, actually, which is, "Wild, how does the money come back?" I remember asking him over the phone while I was folding laundry, trying to sound casual. Ethan did not hesitate. He never hesitated. He said, "It comes back the way it always does. Through movement, through timing, through the system." I should have stopped him right there and said, "That is not an answer." Instead, I nodded like I understood, because I did not want to sound stupid. Then he added, "My, you are smarter than this. Do not let anxiety make you ask beginner questions." Beginner questions. That phrase hit my pride like a dart. I did not want to be a beginner. I wanted to be the girl who finally figured it out. So I apologized for asking. I actually apologized. That is how deep I was in it. My diary entry that night says, I need to trust the process. The next day, my best friend called. I almost did not answer because I was in Ethan's rhythm by then, always available to him, always busy for everyone else. But I picked up, and she said, My, can I ask you something without you getting mad? Her voice was careful, like she was walking through glass. I said yes, but my stomach tightened because I already knew what was coming. She asked if Ethan had ever shown me paperwork, a contract, a real name, a company address, anything. I froze. I told her he had a plan. I told her he had experience. I told her he believed in me. She was quiet for a long second. Then she said, Believing in you is not proof. I snapped back. You just do not want me to change. The moment the words left my mouth, I hated myself a little, but I still said them. Because that is what happens when you attach your identity to a decision. If someone questions the decision, it feels like they are questioning you. After that call, I did not write about her kindness. I wrote about her doubt. I wrote, People always try to pull you back to their level. That sentence embarrasses me now because it was not her level. It was reality. Ethan noticed my mood later and asked what was wrong. I told him my friend was being negative. He sighed like he was disappointed in the world, not in me, and said, This is why I told you to keep it quiet. They will not understand until you are winning. And then he gave me the sweetest poison. I am proud of you for not letting them stop you. Proud. Again, that word became my leash. 2 hours later, he sent a message with a number and a deadline. If you can add 2,000 by Friday, we lock in the next step. Friday was 3 days away. My account was not built for sudden deadlines. My life was not built for them either. But instead of hearing alarm bells, I heard opportunity knocking. And I wrote one more line in my diary that night. The line that turned everything from risky to reckless. I will find a way. I will find a way. That sentence felt powerful when I wrote it, like I was taking control. What it really meant was that I was about to start bending my life around someone else's deadline. The next page in my diary has a list of options, and reading it now makes my chest tight because I can see the moment I stopped being a careful person and started being a desperate one. I wrote, Option 1, use savings. Then I crossed it out and wrote, No, like I was being disciplined, because my savings was supposed to be my safety. Option 2, sell something. I underlined that one. I started scanning my apartment with new eyes, not as a home, but as a collection of items with resale value. A lamp, a chair, a coffee table, a designer bag I had bought during a rare moment of celebration. None of it felt like mine anymore. It felt like inventory. Option 3, overtime. I wrote it, then circled Friday and did the math. There was no version of overtime that could become $2,000 in 3 days. Option 4, credit. I did not circle that one. I stared at it like it was a cliff. I had always been proud of my credit. I used it like a tool, not a crutch. I paid balances down. I avoided carrying debt. But pride is a fragile thing when you are chasing approval. Ethan texted me that night, Friday is important. I know you can do this. And I felt that stupid warmth again, the one that feels like love but acts like pressure. The next morning, I went to work and pretended everything was normal. I smiled at coworkers. I answered emails. I took a lunch break like a robot and ate something tasteless because my stomach was too tight to enjoy food. In the bathroom mirror, my face looked the same, but my eyes looked like they were hiding something. That afternoon, I called my bank just to ask a question. That is what I told myself. Just information. The representative explained a balance transfer option and a credit limit increase process, and my hands got sweaty as I listened. I kept thinking, I am not that kind of person. But I was already becoming that kind of person. On the drive home, I passed a billboard about financial freedom, and it felt like the universe was winking at me. I hate admitting that. I hate how ready I was to interpret random things as signs. That night, I applied for the increase. While the page loaded, my heart thumped so hard I could feel it in my throat. Approved. The number on the screen looked like permission. I wrote in my diary, It is temporary. I will pay it back fast. Then I wrote a second line right under it, smaller. This is what growth feels like. Growth. I was calling anxiety growth. The next day, I made the transfer. I did it from my kitchen table again, The same place where I used to plan normal things like grocery lists and weekend errands. I remember the sunlight coming through the blinds, striping the table like a warning, and I remember how I did not want to text Ethan until the money was gone because I wanted to feel brave, not controlled. But the second it processed, I sent the screenshot anyway. He replied in less than a minute. That is my girl. You are going to thank yourself. My girl. It sounds affectionate, but now it makes my skin crawl because it did not feel like partnership. It felt like ownership. Friday came, and Ethan said we were locked in. He told me not to worry if things looked slow at first, because real moves happened behind the scenes. Behind the scenes became his favorite phrase. Anytime I asked for clarity, he called it impatience. Anytime I asked for proof, he called it negativity. And because I wanted to be the kind of person who could handle big opportunities, I swallowed my questions. I smiled through the discomfort. I told myself this was adulthood. Then came the first moment where the story should have ended. The moment that was so small, I almost missed it. Friday night, around 9:40 p.m., Ethan sent a message that did not match his usual confidence. Just one sentence. Do not panic if you see a hold. A hold? On what? I stared at my phone, waiting for more, and my pulse started to climb. I opened my bank app and refreshed. Nothing looked different yet. I refreshed again. Still nothing. I told myself I was overreacting. Then the screen updated. A pending hold I did not recognize. Not huge, but not small either. Enough to make my account feel suddenly fragile. My mouth went dry. I texted Ethan, "What is this?" The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally he replied, "It is normal. It is part of verification. Do not ask anyone. Do not call the bank. It will clear." That was the first time the word normal sounded like a command instead of reassurance. I wanted to believe him, but my body did not. I could feel the warning spreading through me like cold water. Still, I did what I had been trained to do. I did not call. I did not tell anyone. I sat on my couch in the dark, phone in my hand, watching that hold sit there like a shadow, and I whispered to myself the lie that kept me quiet. If I just stay calm, it will all work out. I did not sleep that night. I kept my phone on the pillow beside me like it could protect me, and every time I closed my eyes, my brain replayed Ethan's message. Do not call the bank. It was such a strange instruction when you really think about it. If something is normal, you do not need to hide it. If something is legitimate, you do not need to be scared of questions. But I was already deep enough that my first instinct was not to protect myself. It was to protect the story I had bought into. I told myself the hold would clear by morning, because Ethan said it would, and Ethan sounded so sure. The next morning, I opened my bank app before I even brushed my teeth. The hold was still there. I refreshed. Still there. I checked the timestamp like that would make a difference. My hands started shaking, not the dramatic kind, but the small tremor you get when your body knows you are about to lose control of something. I texted Ethan. It did not clear. He replied 30 minutes later, which was unusual. The message was short. It will. Stop refreshing. You are feeding anxiety. Feeding anxiety. He made my fears sound like a habit I could fix with willpower. I wanted to argue, but I did not. I went through my day like I was holding a secret in my throat. At work, I answered questions with a smile that felt glued on. My manager asked if I was okay, and I said I was just tired. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. At lunch, I tried to eat a sandwich and could not finish it. My stomach was clenched around something invisible. By late afternoon, the hold had not cleared, and a new notification appeared. Account review in progress. Those words looked official, and that made it worse. I called Ethan immediately. He did not answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. A third time. Nothing. Then a text came through. I am in a meeting. Relax. You are fine. Relax. That word makes me angry now, because it was never comfort, it was control. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my notebook open and tried to write, because writing is what I do when I feel trapped. The entry starts with, I am trying to stay calm. Then the pen mark cuts hard through the paper, and you can see where my hand pressed too much. Under it I wrote, why does he not want me to call? I stared at that question for a long time. It was the first honest thing I had written in weeks. I almost took his advice and stayed silent. Almost. But then I remembered a tiny detail that should not have mattered and suddenly mattered a lot. The memo line he told me to use. Reimbursement. That word had felt harmless, but now it felt like a costume. like we were dressing something up to look normal. I opened my phone and searched my messages for every instruction he had ever sent me. Friends and family. Do not mention investment. Keep it clean. Do not talk about it. The pattern was there, obvious when you look at it all at once. Every step had been designed to make me harder to protect later. The thought hit me so sharply my eyes watered, and for the first time I felt something stronger than fear. I felt stupid. Not in a self-pity way. In a clear, cold way. Like a light turning on in a room I did not want to see. I picked up the bank envelope on my counter and slid my finger under the flap. My heart pounded as if opening paper could change my life. Inside was a notice with more official language, more polite words that still landed like a slap. Unusual activity, temporary restrictions, verification required. Verification required. I grabbed my phone and called Ethan again. This time it rang twice and then stopped. Not voicemail. Stopped. Like the call was rejected. I stared at my screen, and it finally happened. The thought I had been avoiding formed into a sentence so loud it felt like someone said it out loud in my apartment. He is not busy. He is dodging me. The call ending like that did something to me. It was not a scream or a scene or some dramatic moment. It was quiet, and that made it worse. Quiet means you have room to hear your own thoughts, and my thoughts were finally catching up. I sat there with the bank notice in one hand and my phone in the other, staring at Ethan's last message like it was going to change if I looked hard enough. Relax. You are fine. It read like a joke now. I tried again, not because I expected an answer, but because I needed to prove to myself I was not being paranoid. Ring. Ring. Then nothing. No voicemail. No explanation. Just the line going dead. I opened our message thread and typed, "Please call me now." I watched the little status under the text. Delivered. Not read. I waited 10 minutes, then typed again, "My account is restricted. I need you to explain what is happening." Delivered. Not read. I scrolled up, searching for anything I could use to anchor myself, and my eyes landed on a message from weeks earlier where he wrote, "If something ever looks weird, it is because the system is working." I used to think that sentence was wisdom. Now I realized it was a shield. It was designed to make any warning sign feel like progress. My stomach turned as the pattern snapped into focus. He had prepared me to distrust everyone except him. That is why my best friend's caution had sounded like jealousy. That is why calling the bank had sounded like betrayal. I put my phone down, took a deep breath, and did the thing I should have done the first time. I called the bank. When the representative answered, her voice was calm, professional, boring in the way real life is. She asked me to verify my identity. Then she pulled up the activity and explained that certain transfers had triggered a review. She used words like risk and dispute and authorization, and I kept nodding even though she could not see me. Then she asked a question that made the room tilt. "Do you personally know the recipient of these transfers, and can you confirm the purpose?" I opened my mouth and almost repeated Ethan's script. Reimbursement. Friends and family. Keep it clean. But something in me finally refused. I said, "He told me what to write." There was a pause on the line, just long enough for me to feel exposed. Then she said, gently, "Ma'am, if someone instructed you to label transfers in a certain way, that is concerning." Concerning. Such a polite word for what I suddenly understood. She explained what steps I could take, what documentation I might need, what was and was not possible. She did not promise me a miracle. She just gave me reality. When I hung up, my hands were cold. I looked at my diary again, at the page where I had circled that sentence about regret, and I realized I had been living inside a story Ethan wrote for me. I was not his partner. I was his cover. The next part hurts to admit, but it is the truth. My first instinct was still to call him, not to report him, because my heart was still attached to the version of him I wanted to be real. So I tried one last time. I dialed. It rang once, then straight to voicemail. Voicemail. Finally. That meant I was not being ignored by accident. I was being filtered. I did not leave a long message. I did not cry. I did not beg. I just said, "Ethan, I talked to the bank. Call me back." I hung up and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It said, "Stop calling. You are making it worse." No name. No explanation. Just a command. And that was the moment the last bit of hope in me cracked, because only one person in my life would say it like that, with that same calm pressure. Ethan was still there. He just did not want to be accountable. The unknown number telling me to stop calling should have been the end of the story. The moment I walked away and never looked back. Instead, it was the moment my life started shrinking. I blocked the number, then unblocked it 5 minutes later because my brain kept whispering, what if he is right? What if I ruin my chance by reacting? That is how control works. It makes you doubt your own instincts until you ask permission to protect yourself. I did not want to admit it, but I was scared. Not of him, of what it meant about me. I opened my diary and wrote one line in shaky handwriting. I think I got played. Then I stared at the sentence like it was too ugly to be true. The next 48 hours were a blur of small humiliations. I had to call the bank again and answer questions that made my cheeks burn, because every time I tried to explain, it sounded worse. I had to move money around just to cover basics, like gas and groceries, because the restriction meant I could not trust what would go through and what would not. I stopped buying anything that was not necessary. I started calculating every purchase in my head, down to the dollar. I told myself it was temporary, but deep down I felt something heavier: consequences. At work, I could not focus. I reread the same email 3 times and still did not understand it. When my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, even when it was just a weather alert. My best friend texted, "How are you?" And I stared at the screen for a full minute before typing, "I am fine." I was not fine. I just did not know how to say, "You warned me," and I chose pride anyway. That night, I went back to the earlier pages, before Ethan, before deadlines, before the word timing took over my brain. I found an entry where I wrote about wanting a simple life, a steady life, a life where I could sleep. I read it and felt grief for that version of me. Not because she was perfect, but because she was honest. Then I flipped forward to the page with the circled sentence, the one about regret, and I realized the worst loss was not the money. The worst loss was my trust in myself. That is what Ethan took first, quietly, one compliment at a time, one deadline at a time, one rule at a time. By the time the bank notice showed up, I was already trained to obey. I sat on my floor in the dim light of my apartment and whispered something I had avoided saying out loud. I made the wrong choice. And the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the sound of my life demanding that I finally face what comes next.